The annual executive summit for the Remington family was always a flashy display of power and tradition, staged on the penthouse floor of their sleek Seattle headquarters, a glass fortress with a panoramic view of the harbor. It had been 6 years since I last set foot in that building. I was just 24 then, fresh out of grad school with dual master's degrees in business analytics and engineering systems. That day also happened to be when my aunt, Eleanor Remington, very publicly shut down my application. Fast forward to today, I wasn't Emma Lynn, the humiliated outsider anymore. I walked in as the CEO of cutthroat Logistics, the biggest client Remington Industries had, pushing more than $60 million through their freight operations annually. They just hadn't realized it was me behind the curtain. The quarterly numbers are looking strong, my cousin Nathan said, clicking through yet another painfully flashy PowerPoint presentation. Thanks mainly to our anchor account, cutthroat. I took a slow sip of my espresso to hide the smirk itching at my lips. I still remembered the tone Nathan used 6 years ago. Look, Emma, you're smart, but this place? It's not really for people like you. Here, it was all about bloodlines and old-school loyalty. And Eleanor gave him an approving nod. Outstanding analysis, Nathan. This is why leadership stays in the family. In the family. I looked down at my tablet, where the real numbers told a different story. Numbers quietly handed to me by an insider who didn't like the lies. Nathan had been cooking the books for nearly a year, losses buried, gaps plugged. Truth was, Remington Industries only stayed afloat thanks to my company's contracts. Ms. Lynn, a quiet voice interrupted. Eleanor's assistant, Camila, gestured to the boardroom doors. They're ready for your presentation. I stood, smoothing the lapel of my sharply cut navy blazer. It was tailored to perfection, nothing like the wrinkled discount rack dress I wore the day I practically begged for a spot here. Back then, Eleanor told me I didn't look like Remington material. As I stepped up to the podium, Nathan's voice cut across the room. Emma, what are you doing here? This meeting's for board members only. I scanned the table, meeting each confused stare. I'm here representing cutthroat Logistics. Dead silence. Eleanor narrowed her eyes. That's not how this works. Cutthroat always sends someone from the external team. I smiled. They do. And that someone is me. You could hear a pin drop. Nathan looked like he'd forgotten how to function. My cousin Jamie dropped her pen. The shock hit them like a slow-moving train. That's not possible, Eleanor said, barely getting the words out. You run a small consulting firm. We ran a full background check. I tapped my screen, flipping to my first slide. That consulting firm? It was just the surface. cutthroat, formerly known as Nova Strategies, is mine. I've been building it from the ground up these past 6 years. Gasps followed. The girl they tossed aside was now the backbone of the empire they were so proud of. The screen lit up with sharp, undeniable facts. cutthroat's audited financials. Annual revenue triple that of Remington Industries. Offices across 14 countries. A global footprint that made their local reach look like child's play. Below that, a client roster stacked with 9 Fortune 500 companies. Someone let out a stunned breath. Nathan stood, pale as paper. No, that's not possible. You can't be her. Can't be what? I asked, my voice cool. The same woman you laughed at during the internship mixer? The niece who didn't fit your definition of Remington enough? Or the woman whose company is currently keeping your entire division from collapsing? The room erupted in hushed chaos. We would have known, Nathan insisted. Oh! Like the way you knew about the $8.2 million you hid with fake inventory numbers and deferred revenue tactics. His mouth fell open. Around him, the board members turned to each other, whispering urgently. I've spent the last 6 years building cutthroat into what it is now, I said calmly. And while you were busy gatekeeping the family name, I was out there building the business that's saving yours. While you all toasted your little victory over keeping me out of the inner circle, I was quietly becoming the one thing keeping your company afloat. Across the room, Eleanor's knuckles turned white as she clutched the arms of her chair. "Why come forward now?" she asked through gritted teeth. I flipped to the next slide, a breakdown of Remington Industries' total dependence on Kirakor. It didn't pull any punches. 82% of their logistics revenue, 70% of new client growth, and over half their remaining retention strategies were running on systems and infrastructure my company controlled. "Because it's time for new terms," I said plainly. "And after what I've uncovered behind the curtain, I'm not even sure there's anything left worth saving." "You can't just walk away," Nathan stammered. "Those contracts expire in 5 business days." I cut in, voice sharp. "And as the CEO of Kirakor, I have serious concerns about Remington's long-term stability." "That includes your stability, cousin." The boardroom broke into chaos. Directors demanded answers. Eleanor turned her death stare on Nathan. Jamie muttered something about exposure and liability. I didn't move. I just stood there, cool and steady, letting them get hit with the storm I'd seen coming for months. "I'll be calling an emergency audit meeting tomorrow morning." 9 o'clock sharp, I said, collecting my tablet and closing my notes. "My team will present a full forensic analysis of your financials. I suggest you come prepared." "This is personal," Nathan said, voice shaky. "You're doing this because we didn't let you in." I stopped at the door. That moment 6 years ago still echoed in the back of my mind. Nathan's smug voice, Eleanor's ice-cold silence, the laughter as I walked out pretending I wasn't shattered inside. I looked him straight in the eye. "No, Nathan," I said quietly. "This isn't payback. This is business, the same business you once said I'd never understand." I checked my watch. 9 a.m. Don't be late. Though let's be honest, punctuality was never your side of the family's strong suit. As I walked into the hallway, I could hear the room splintering into accusations. Eleanor's carefully kept calm was slipping. Nathan tried again to explain away the numbers, but his voice sounded more desperate now. By the elevators, my assistant Michael was waiting, holding out a chilled bottle of sparkling water. "How'd it go?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "Just like we planned," I said as we stepped in together. "And if that boardroom surprise was satisfying, wait till you see what happens when the audit hits." I pressed the button for the lobby. "Everything set for tomorrow?" I asked. Michael grinned. "Full audit reports. A forensic breakdown of Nathan's financial gymnastics. And a dependency analysis that'll make them physically nauseous. They won't know what hit them." I thought about Eleanor's expression when it all clicked. About Nathan's pale, panicked face, scrambling to defend numbers that had never been honest. And I thought about the years they spent whispering about how I didn't have the right background. That I wasn't a real Remington. That I didn't belong. "Send me the latest version of the termination letter," I told Michael. "I want to review it myself tonight." "You're really pulling out of every contract?" he asked. I smiled. A slow, sure thing. "Let's just say they're finally going to learn what earned power looks like." "Tomorrow?" "Tomorrow they learn how real business is done." The next morning, I arrived at Remington HQ an hour early. The same building that had slammed its doors in my face 6 years ago. The same security guard was there. He stood up so quickly he nearly spilled his coffee. "Ms. Lin, welcome." He blinked, clearly startled. "They're already gathering upstairs." I gave him a small nod. "I'm early," I said. Funny what collapse smells like, I thought as the executive elevator doors closed behind me. The polished chrome panels threw my reflection back at me, only now it wasn't the girl they'd ignored. It was the woman who'd end up writing the final chapter of their dynasty. The boardroom was packed. Tension hung in the air like fog. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, but the fire she used to wield was gone, all hollowed out. Nathan slouched beside the legal team, looking like he'd already lost. I could see the whispers beginning among the independent directors, their eyes darting between the pages of the reports in front of them. Behind me, my analysts filed in. Each one handpicked. Each one planted inside this company years ago, quietly pulling strings while the Remington heirs played their entitled little games. I stepped up to the podium. Morning, everyone, I said, calm and clear. Let's start, Harper, Eleanor said, her voice thinner than I'd ever heard it. Although, perhaps we could speak in private first? I tilted my head just slightly. I think we've had enough of those cozy family chats, don't you? I gestured to my team. Go ahead. Pass the reports. Paper shuffled like a rising storm. A beat later, gasps. Someone swore under their breath. This can't be right, one board member whispered, flipping back a few pages. Oh, it's accurate, I said, tapping my screen as my presentation loaded. Let's begin with your creative accounting, shall we? My gaze landed on Nathan. Maybe you'd like to explain how more than $8 million in losses were neatly hidden under vague operational costs? His lawyer started to protest, but I held up a hand. Or would you prefer we skip to the fake client stats, the imaginary assets, or the part where, without Kira Core contracts, Remington Industries is technically underwater? You're trying to destroy us, Nathan said, voice cracking. I didn't flinch. No, Nathan. You did that yourself. You do this to your own family? I raised a brow. You mean after you told half the industry I wasn't leadership material? Or when Aunt Eleanor said I'd never understand what real business meant? That was years ago, Eleanor muttered, a little too quickly. Yes, 6 years, I said. While you were guarding your little family crest and polishing your father's awards, I was building something from the ground up. Today, Kira Core outpaces you 3-1. I advanced the slide. The numbers hit hard. The bar graph didn't lie. 47% of your current revenue is tied directly to us, I said. And if I pull our contract on Monday, all of that disappears. Chaos. Full-blown. Voices rising, chairs screeching, the legal team practically holding triage in the corner. One board member swore out loud. Then Nathan cracked. I didn't mean for it to spiral like this, he mumbled, slouching lower in his seat. You can't just pull out, Harper. Eleanor stood, red with fury. We'll take legal action. On what basis? I said, my voice dropping an octave. That your niece, the one you kicked out, built a company that now props yours up? Or maybe because your golden boy lied to your entire board and fudged numbers so badly the SEC would have found it eventually. I leaned in slightly. Please. Let your lawyers depose Nathan. I'd love to hear him explain phantom revenue and liability hiding. A gray-haired director cleared his throat. Miss Lynn, under the circumstances, the board might need to consider immediate leadership changes. Leadership changes? Nathan's voice cracked. This is our company. Actually, I said, placing a sealed envelope on the table, not for much longer. Inside were 2 options. Option 1, Remington Industries agrees to a full internal restructure. Nathan resigns. The board brings in outside leadership. We stay on under a scaled-down contract, but with full oversight. And option 2? Eleanor asked, her voice almost gone. I walk, I said. Every contract terminated. And our audit findings get forwarded to the feds. I glanced at my watch. You've got 1 hour. This isn't business, Nathan spit. It's revenge. No, cousin, I said softly. It's exactly what you said it was. Business. Ruthless. Results-driven. And only for those who prove they belong. I picked up my tablet, my notes. My silence. You once said I'd never deserve the CEO suite, I whispered to no one. Funny how things change. I left them there, buried in financial wreckage, buried in their own arrogance. By the time I stepped into my private suite, all glass and skyline, my phone was already vibrating nonstop. Mom, how could you do this to your aunt? Dad, you're tearing the family apart. My cousins, you've ruined everything. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a dusty old folder in my inbox, the rejection email. The one Eleanor had sent me 6 years ago. Dear Harper, while we admire your ambition, we feel you lack the leadership instincts required at Remington Industries. Perhaps a role with fewer responsibilities would better suit your strengths. Sincerely, Eleanor Remington. I smiled. Clicked archive. Then hit print. The paper felt heavier than it should have as I laid it gently on my new desk. My desk. The board had seen enough. The evidence was airtight. The dependency clear. There was only one rational path left. Accept my terms or lose everything. BY sunset, it was over. Nathan resigned. Quietly. No speech. No dignity left to salvage. Eleanor was ushered into early retirement, the kind no one fights when they know it's overdue, and Remington Industries, once a castle built on nepotism and family names, would now operate under my oversight. Restructured. Rebuilt. Reclaimed. The empire they swore I didn't belong to now reported to me. Michael stepped into the room just as the last of the signatures dried. A bottle of champagne in hand. "Congratulations," he said, grinning. "On a very elegant takeover." "Not a takeover," I said, watching through the window as Nathan and Eleanor packed their offices into cardboard boxes. "Just business. The kind they swore I'd never understand." My phone buzzed again. "Mom, you didn't have to humiliate them. Dad, this isn't how families handle conflict. The cousins, we grew up together. How could you?" I opened the family group chat. Typed one message. Hit send. "Don't worry about the family name. Remington Industries is finally in qualified hands." I set my phone down. The Pacific stretched out in front of me, painted in gold and firelight as the skyline swallowed the sun. And for the first time in years, peace found me, not the kind that comes from approval, but from clarity. The kind that comes when you stop asking for recognition and take what you've earned. Because success? It's not always about landing the job you begged for. Sometimes it's about building something so undeniable, they have no choice but to meet you at your table. And the best revenge? It's not revenge at all, it's becoming their boss. Eleanor had been right about one thing, though. I wasn't qualified to work at Remington Industries. I was qualified to own it. "Hey, before we move on, how was your day?" Really, we don't ask that enough in a world this loud, but I'd love to know. Drop it in the comments. Good, bad, stuck in between. I'm listening. Because sometimes, being heard is the first step toward being seen. And if you've made it this far, thank you. For showing up, for sticking with this story, for walking every hard-earned step with me. When they told me I wasn't good enough to sit at their table, I didn't argue. I built my own, and now they stand around mine. So tell me, have you ever been underestimated? Shut out? Overlooked by people who were supposed to believe in you? Tell me how you kept going anyway. Or tell me where you are now, and I'll cheer for you like no one else did, because if I've learned anything, it's this. Quiet strength makes the loudest impact. If this story hit something in you, hit that subscribe button. Not just for me, for you. Because this isn't just about revenge. Or boardrooms. Or power. It's about finding your voice, owning your worth, and rewriting your place in the world. You don't need permission to begin. You don't need approval to grow, and you definitely don't need anyone's blessing to become who you were always meant to be. So go ahead. Archive the rejection. Build what they said you couldn't. And when they finally recognize you, make sure it's because you refused to disappear. I'll be here, sharing stories like this and waiting to hear yours, because sometimes the best success story starts with a no. You turned into power.